This is AM 650's The Law Show with Sterling Fox. Now back to the show.
In studio with us this Remembrance Day weekend are Angela Thiel and Christine Eilers from Lindsay Kenney LLP. Two offices, Christine on Georgia Street downtown, and the other one is it Langley or
yep.
Surrey?
In Langley.
Okay. Wanted to ask both of you, we've been talking about disputes and resolving family law disputes. We've mentioned numerous times that there's a new Family Law Act in British Columbia, only about 6 months old. I wanted to just sort of get you to dig into your case files for a couple of minutes and using a couple of examples. What is, when you're trying to get this done, whether it's arbitration or going to trial or mediation or negotiations with other lawyers or whatever, what are the worst case scenarios? What happens when something goes south, and what makes something just go right off the rails?
I think to some extent it's that anger you're talking about. And, well, it's either the kids or the anger, and the person wants to go to court and they insist on going to court, and you have to go to court because you simply can't come up with a resolution. And the matter works its way all the way through the court process, and you may have told your client many times, the rational outcome is likely to be this, but they just refuse to listen and wind up
because they wanted their day in court, damn it, and that was that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Or whatever. Some small issue is so important to them, and they're not willing to listen to your advice about what's actually going to happen. And so it ends up working its way all the way to trial, and you may or may not still be on the record as a lawyer. And then the outcome ends up being exactly what you predicted the whole way through, and that client is upset and depressed, and they've got the worst result possible, and really it's because they weren't able to see clearly earlier on.
And
usually.
they weren't able to hear what you said, and what you said was, take a deep breath and then consider these facts. And the emotion was just so rampant that there was no satisfying anything until the day in court happened.
Yeah.
Okay, how about you, Angela? What goes south when you're trying to do things? What really messes things up when you're trying to get these disputes resolved?
Well, the other thing about people being in court is that sometimes the man, the woman who seems rational you prepare them, you get them ready, you tell them, you need to present in this fashion. They're either terrible when, they look at you as you ask the first question. I remember in court as you're asking your clients the questions.
And you've rehearsed them and the whole bit, and they just clam right up.
Well, it's worse than that. You can't suggest an answer to them. So you're saying, tell me about this. And a crucial issue that they absolutely wanted to say certain things that make the real difference legally.
Right.
They blow it entirely, or in cross-examination, they agree to a proposition that the other lawyer puts to them because they're sort of, I remember one in particular, and someone said, I said, why would you say that was right? She said to me, well, he was suggesting it was the case. I thought he knew the facts. And it was like, oh, okay, but you had a different view or you had a different opinion. But cross-examination can be very difficult to withstand.
Of course.
It's people are, we're good at what we do, and clients will, or people on the other side, they'll agree with our theories. They'll say, well, I'll put it to you that, don't you think it would be better for the kids if this was the schedule?
Right.
And they go, what? That schedule sounds pretty good. And they don't realize that's what I've been suggesting for quite some time.
Right.
But, I've always said my worst case scenario is parents who use the children as weapons and kids that get alienated from parents during the process. I don't want you to go and live half time with dad, because that will be less money for me. So I'll make sure that I've just got you so tight to my to me. I tell you nasty things about your father. I tell you he had an affair. I suggest, he may have been acting inappropriately sexually with you. Those are by far the worst case scenarios.
Right.
They don't happen as much with lawyers, I hope, but I think there's an awful lot of self-represented litigants in the court, and the judges are hearing a lot of those types of cases. The people that didn't get any advice along the way, no counselor, no therapist, the anger, no lawyers, and the poor judges are there dealing with the damaged family. And it must be awfully depressing for a judge to go, no one's going to fix this after I, say here are my reasons.
Right. This is a mess and likely to remain that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
And those families sometimes keep coming into court again and again and again.
Just over custody disputes, those sorts of things?
Back and forth for years sometimes, those ones, the high conflict. It's really awful.
Yeah.
Well, and again, when you see these, and this happens a lot in the celebrity file.
Yeah.
These divorces that go on, and there's child custody battles and all the rest of it. I'm afraid I have no sympathy for the adults. I reserve all of my sympathies in all of these cases for the kids, because they're the ones with the least ability to control anything who are getting the most messed up.
Yeah. And I mean, every psychologist, every counselor, every mental health professional will tell parents, don't do this. Don't talk to your children about how you feel about getting divorced.
Right.
Everybody breaks the rules.
Right.
And, often if you see your client, if you hope to see the client really early on, and that's one of the first things you'll say to them, don't talk to the kids about, how you feel. Don't make them your confidant. But they break the rules all the time.
Sorry, Christine, we're down to about a minute or so left, and you have pointed out a couple of times that, in a lot of these possibilities, these options for resolving disputes, lawyers not always are required to be involved. And in some cases, as you've indicated, that's because lawyers cost a lot, and not everybody can afford a lawyer. But there are some instances in which a lawyer's services are really critical, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there are times when you need a lawyer. I mean, there's complicated financial issues, there's difficult issues, as Angela was talking about, with alienation of children, things like that you just really need to have a lawyer to sort of walk you through what's going on. Even things like property division, spousal support, that type of stuff, you need a lawyer to at least give you some advice.
I was just going to say, even if you don't need a lawyer for the entire duration of the process, it's probably a really smart thing up front to sit down with a lawyer and get a fix on what your situation is, and legally where you stand. Sometimes you can take it from there, sometimes not. But that important meeting is critical, isn't it?
Well, for any agreement to be binding at the end of the day, you need to understand the nature and the consequences of what you're signing.
Right.
And really having legal advice is essential to being able to understand what you're agreeing to.
Okay, and ultimately that's the end of it. The dispute, whatever it may be, is resolved, Angela, through some kind of formal agreement that both parties are bound to, correct?
Sometimes the judge has to do it for them, but hopefully they're bound.
Yeah.
Well, we strongly recommend the good people at Lindsay Kenney LLP for family law issues. They're in Vancouver and Langley. And for Angela Thiel and Christine Eilers, I'm Sterling Fox for The Law Show here at AM 650.